Well, shifting focus to the auto sector now, representatives from the Federation of Automobile Dealers met with State Bank of India officials to discuss ways to tackle the crisis that has gripped Motor. And remember, the auto sector is currently going through its worst phase in the last 2 decades. According to FADA, around 200 passenger vehicle dealer showrooms have downed shutters in the last year, leading to job losses of around 25,000 people. Joining us now is P.K. Gupta, the Managing Director of State Bank of India. Also with us, Vinkesh Gulati, the Vice President of the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Mr. Gupta, if I could start by asking you, because there was a circular that the State Bank of India had issued which had led to some degree of consternation within the dealer community, within the auto space, making it even more onerous for them to be able to access finance. Since then, there has been a meeting of dealers with the State Bank. What is the way forward, sir?
See, this sector has been facing some stress for the last about 8-9 months actually. Okay, and on a review of our exposure to the sector, so we had issued an advisory to our branches to be careful about taking fresh exposure on this. We already have substantial exposure, so we have been engaged regularly with all the auto majors as well as the dealers across the country to see how we can help them to tide over this problem. In fact, this was a proactive action which we have been taking, talking to the auto majors as well as the dealers. In fact, we had a meeting yesterday here where all the dealers from across the country along with the FADA leaders, they were all called so that we could listen to the problems they are facing and how we can work with them so that this stress can be eased actually. So I think what we decided also is that we will work with each of the dealers.
Sir?
No, see, the thing is that...
I understand that, but are there any changes to the circular that you had issued? Because that circular is the one that caused a great degree of additional nervousness, both in terms of access to finance, collateral, penalty, and so on and so forth. So has there been any change to that circular?
Not
or
really.
Will there be any change to that circular?
I don't think that any of the dealers actually approached us. See, ultimately, basically the stress from the bank's point of view has been is that we already have the exposures, that the inventories have been there with the dealers. They need to sell those inventories so that they can actually get more finance from the banks and they can rotate the finance. The problem is when the inventories are stuck, actually, they have not sold, so which means that they are not able to liquidate the outstanding with the bank on the due dates actually, and that is where the stress was coming from. So what we are working with the dealers is in terms of giving them extra time so that they can, hold that inventory for a little longer actually and liquidate. So that is the basic requirement that we have been getting from the dealers and from the auto majors. As you know that the sales are already down, so there is not so much of requirement for fresh finance which we are seeing. So what we are, been requested by the dealers is about giving them a little bit of more time actually.
Okay, giving them extra time. How much time are you willing to give them? What is going to be the grace period or the extended grace period?
See, that again, we're working with the auto majors as well as the dealers. Generally, the norm most of the time the request is between 15 days to 30 days, and that is what we are working with them actually.
What is the current exposure that SBI has, sir, to the sector as a whole, to the auto sector as a whole?
No, I think, I'm not talking numbers because our results are there day after. I was told not to talk of numbers. I am just clarifying. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Fair point. Let me bring in Vinkesh Gulati of FADA. Vinkesh, you just heard what Mr. P.K. Gupta had to say. Take us through what the big challenge is at this point in time, the extension of the grace period. Will that alleviate some of the pain that you're facing?
Yeah, obviously, Shireen. So when we met Mr. Gupta at that time, he was considerate and understood what our issues are. So he assured that if there is any genuine reason where the dealers are getting stressed because of the inventory funding, they'll look up to us and case to case, and they'll support the dealership. We had a lot of discussion on this circular also, where for them it was just a general thing which was already happening in the industry, and this pertains to majorly the fresh cases which are going to happen. Whereas as of now, the dealers are already up to the brim, and I doubt that any dealer will go with any bankers, moreover the State Bank, to get any fresh liquidity support for carrying inventory. The inventory levels, as FED has already given before also, is at the epitome at this time. So I don't think this circular would actually affect the market or the dealers as of now.
Okay, so what is the way forward now, Vinkesh? Because as you're saying that dealers are already saddled with inventory, and hence, as Mr. Gupta was pointing out, they're not looking at accessing fresh funds because they're trying to get rid of the current inventory. So what is the way forward, and do you see any light at the end of this very dark tunnel that you've been in for many months now?
So I feel this dark tunnel will end. It will take another year to end. But yes, there are spikes of light in between. I'm expecting this October, being the festive season, to be a good month for us. And like Mr. Gupta assumed that the retails will go up and the inventory will go down with all these issues will be solved. We are expecting, like OEMs are reducing their production, they are having production cuts. Slowly and steadily, when we enter the October and the retail actually happens, and it will be supported with the kind of monsoon. Monsoon has been good this time. With that support, I am expecting that inventory will go down in October. So a spike of light in October and maybe a bit of pre-buying, which is not looking very promising as of now, but we still expect that these will be the two chances of light in this dark tunnel, at least for the time being.
Okay. Mr. Gupta, let me get a word in from you, sir. The hope now is that we will see another cut from the MPC. But let's talk about transmission also, sir, because, you know, State Bank of India, for instance, has cut its deposit rates by a bit. Do you believe that we will now see more effective transmission, greater transmission, and what's the expectation from the MPC?
I think for the transmission, there are ultimately two factors that determine. One is the ability to cut the deposit rates and the liquidity in the system. As you know, that the liquidity has been very good. On a daily basis, I think the system is excess liquidity of almost 1,30,000 crore, which has led to certain easing of the liquidity situation in the market. Some of the banks who are actually paying slightly higher rates of interest than us also have actually moderated their rates. So this has given us the opportunity to cut our deposit rates also. So the deposit rate cut will ultimately get translated into an MCLR cut actually, and that will happen in the first week of August when our ALCO meets. So the transmission does happen in India with a little bit of lag. I think that is the point which we have been making in the past also. So by now, I think quite a bit of the transmission has already happened for the rates that have already been cut. And if the current situation continues, we see more transmission happening in the coming months.
All right, Mr. Gupta and Mr. Gulati, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Extension of the grace period. That's what the State Bank of India has assured dealers who are going through a significant amount of pain because of the inventory build-up. With that,